Did your first semester not go exactly as you planned and you want a better start to the second part of the year? Well, if so, this video is for you.
What happened? What happened?
Well, the first thing you want to do is get very clear on your expectations. Now, when I mean very clear on expectations, you got to know exactly how you want everything to be ran in your class every second of the period. Now, when I first started teaching, I thought I knew what I wanted. And I kind of went to class thinking, you know what? I want my students to be good. I want them to be behaved. I want them to learn, to be excited. And so I had these real vague ideas of what I wanted from my students. But I got to tell you, once you're actually in those trenches, man, you got to get crystal clear on how you want every aspect of every part of your class. Because what happens is, if you do not have a clear expectation of what you want, it's going to be filled up with things that you don't want. So I teach this course, I have this course on classroom management, and the first thing we start with is, what are your expectations? And I take it through like maybe 20, 30 different things of a classroom. So here are some things to consider as far as expectations go. How do you want your students to enter the room? How do you want your students to exit the room? What you want your students to do the first few minutes of class? While students are working on something, how do you want them to behave? What do you want the noise level at? If a student has a question, what should they do? If they have to use a restroom, what should they do? If they need to get something from another person on their backpack, what do they do? You got to understand your expectations for every little thing. Now, it may seem like overkill, and trust me, it does. At first, it's kind of overwhelming. But if you don't have clear expectations, like I said, it's going to be filled with behavior that you don't want. So you got to know exactly what you want every single moment of your class. And once you have the clear expectations, that's when you go on to step 2. Step 2 is you got to hold kids accountable. Now, here's where it gets tough, because what I've found is this. Kids do not behave based upon what we tell them to do. They behave based upon our actions and our carry through. And you know this to be true. I mean, think about this. Maybe when you're in college, and if the professor told you the assignments were due by Friday, and then Friday comes and you notice that you say, I couldn't do it. Take Monday, take Tuesday, take Wednesday. If they change the expectations, that changed your effort going into it, because you knew there's more you can get away with. Kids are no different. In fact, kids are exactly the same, but just magnify that by 100-fold. So in your class, you can tell them one thing. My expectations are that when you come into class, you'll come in quietly. Right? We may have said that. Or if I'm up in front of the class and I'm speaking, you should be quiet. Now, that's what you say. But the real litmus test, the real thing right there is, what do you hold them accountable to? So if you're in front of the class and you at the beginning of the year, and maybe even throughout the year, you voice that when I'm talking, it should be quiet. Those are your verbal things. But I'm telling you, they do not respond to that. They respond to how your actions are. So if you're in the front of the class and you're talking and you let people in the background talk, people in the back talk, or some whispering going on, in your mind, and I know how it is, in my mind, I'm thinking, maybe I should just let this go. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, it's just two people talking, and it's going to take too much work, too much effort to correct it, right? And so if you're thinking that and you let it go, what you're going to find is that there is a snowball effect. Once you tell your kids, this is what I expect, anytime they cross that line, you need to call them on it. Because if you let one thing go, that one thing turns into two things, and two things turns into 3 and 4 and 5. And it's not just with students. One student will get away with it or do something, kind of push a button. The next student see that and they start doing it. And before you know it, you kind of lose control of the class. It may not all happen in that particular moment, but over time, over a few days, over a week, you're going to find that snowball to the point where it feels like it's out of control and you can't pull it back in. So with that said, you got to make sure that you take care of it. And you got to make sure that you hold kids accountable. And with that said, you got to make sure you take care of the small stuff. I call this the broken window scenario. Now, I actually got this from a book, and it's from a mayor. He was a mayor of a big city, and when he took office, this is what he writes in the book. When he took office, what he made sure is he noticed that there's a lot of broken windows, and he made a priority to fix the small stuff, fix the broken windows. It sounds like nothing big, fix the broken windows. But from what he found, was this, that if in a neighborhood, if you have a broken window, shortly after that you find graffiti, shortly after that you find people moving in, illegally moving in, right? Shortly after that, you find crime following. Shortly after that, you find drug. And so it starts with a small thing, the broken window, but because that has been allowed to go, it turns into the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. Same thing in your class. The broken window. It may seem like a small thing. Trust me, a lot of it is a small thing. But if you don't fix a small thing, that grows into something bigger. Give you an example. Desk. Oh, think about this here. Think about this. So on your desk, at the end of the period, students leave. And you notice there's some desks with writing on it. What do? Well, here's the thing. If you let that go, if you don't fix it, next thing you know, the next period comes, and the next day comes, students see that writing, guess what they do? They add to it. And then they add to it. And the next thing you know, not only do you have writing on the desk, you have writing on the seat. Not only that, you have writing in the books. Then you have trash being laid around. Because once you let one thing go, the broken window, it goes to other things. And once again, it doesn't just stay there. It could multiply into behavior overall in your class. So with that said, take care of the small stuff before the small stuff turns into big stuff. The third thing you need to do is have a discipline plan. So let's kind of back it up a little bit and kind of pull it all together here. So the first thing is you got to know where your expectations are. So you set the bar. Wherever that bar is at, you got to put it there, right? You know what you want. The next thing, you got to hold kids accountable. So if your bar is here, you got to make sure the kids' behavior is equal with that bar. So you got to hold them accountable to it. Now, if it's not, then you have to call them out on it. And then that's where number 3 comes in. You need to have a way, a discipline to deal with students that do not rise to where that is. All right. Now, what that discipline is, it can vary based upon your students, your school, could vary based upon your own personal beliefs. But my recommendation is this: you have to have some sort of discipline. Now, a lot of times this word discipline has a bad connotation to it. How I look at discipline is something that you put in place to alter students' behaviors, not to punish. It is not to punish. The purpose of discipline is to alter behavior. That's the overall goal for it. But you need to have a discipline plan. You need to know where you are going to go with a student as far as disciplines, consequences, and so forth. Now, this is what you need to have overall for me, and it's for yourself. You need to have progressive discipline. Here's how I break down progressive discipline. The goal, once again, is to alter behavior. So you need to find out how much pressure you could put on a student to get the response you're looking for, to get the change in behavior you're looking for. Each student's different. Each situation's a little different. All right. So you got to keep that in mind. But you need to take a student through that progressive discipline. So let me give you 2 examples. Look, say Johnny and Susan. Both students are talking in class. So you could go straight to, hey, both students are talking in class. I'm going to call home. I'm going to assign a lunch detention. I'm going to assign an after school detention. I'm going to meet with your parents. You can take it to the extreme if you want to by them talking in class. But you understand, the more discipline you have, the more work it is upon you. Because if you decide to go straight to a detention, then that's going to take time possibly away from your lunch or after school. And it's going to take time away because you have to contact home. It's going to take time away because you probably have to notify the office. It's going to take a lot more time on your part to carry through with that discipline. So if Susie and Johnny are both talking in class and you issue both of them an after school detention, that may take 45 minutes of your time. The time to host detention, the time to call home, the time to document, the time to call the office. That takes a lot of time to do that. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but a better way to approach it is with progressive discipline. Try to find out where that tipping point is at. So here's how I would handle it. Johnny and Susan are talking in class. I would put their name on the board and tell them, see me after class. That's it. Name on the board, see me after class. How long did that take? 10 seconds? Maybe that was it, right? 10 seconds, that's it. And then somewhere during that period, if the behavior has ceased or gone down a little bit, I would have come up to them and I say, hey, Johnny or Susie or both of them, whatever else it is, I just, I put you in the board because you were talking, I was talking. I just got to make sure you don't do it because it's very hard to teach if you're doing that. Can you be good the rest of the period? And they say yes. And I say, awesome. Well, I tell you what, if you're good the rest of the period, don't worry about seeing me after class. It's done. That's it. How long did I take? Maybe 30 seconds. So to correct the behavior, it took about 45 seconds of my time and very little effort on my part. So that was like step number 1 in the progression. But now if behavior continues, here we go, take step number 2. Then I say, hey, we talked earlier, behavior's not changing, see me after class. After class comes, I have a quick conversation with them. Susie, Johnny, whoever else it is. I say, hey, I talked to you earlier in class about this. Here's the problem. I can't have you be doing that class. It gets too hard to handle a class if you're doing that. I need you to make sure you're on point tomorrow. If there's any reason you're not on point tomorrow, then I have to actually assign you a 30-minute lunch detention or a 15-minute lunch detention. Is there any reason you can't make that happen? And you just say, no problem at all. So now that maybe takes 2 minutes. So they saw me after class, hold them for 2 minutes, a quick 2-minute conversation, then we are done. If that solves it, awesome. If not, the following day comes and the behavior continues. And then each time we ante it up, we just kind of amp it up just a little bit. So maybe the next step would they actually, you talk to them and you actually assign a 15-minute detention and a phone call home. Then maybe the next step would be a 30-minute detention and a call. And then, but you see, whatever that is for you, you want to start a little bit at the time. And here's the other big part of it. Once again, what you're going to find is this. Students do not respond to what you're saying, they respond to your action. And so if I have a class that may be out of control, I have 30 kids in the class. If I issue, let's say 10 of them are talking, being disruptive. If I issue all 10 lunch detention, it is too hard to follow up with that. It takes too much time, too much effort, and I'm not going to be able to maintain that. And so then what happens is I lose my drive to follow through. And you don't want to get to that point because once you do that, then the effectiveness starts losing off. So if I start by smaller increments, smaller the consequences to find out exactly what works, you're able to keep that pace, you're able to follow through, and then that is definitely when you see results.